Move on. I want to put up some recent polling, look at the Republican field right now, and look at some of the recent polling here. Giuliani still on top, but his numbers down a little bit. Look at Fred Thompson, who was out in Iowa for the first time this week. His numbers down July to July. Cato Byrne, a lot of questions about whether Fred Thompson has waited too long to get into the race.
Well, it's obviously he has to play catch-up here. He's behind with respect to raising money, with respect to organization. People aren't quite sure yet what that message is going to be, although he's clearly going to be trying to attempt to appeal to conservatives. You know, none of that would be the case had he gotten in a year ago, but a year ago there was no rationale for a Fred Thompson candidacy, right? McCain was the front runner, and when George Allen won his Virginia Senate seat, George Allen was going to be that conservative in the race. Exactly. So he has catching up to do. He's a talented politician. The Republican field is far more fluid than the Democratic field, so there could well be a perch for Fred Thompson. But the others have a real head start.
And it's very interesting, Rudy Giuliani still atop the polls. And it was striking this week when he was asked about his family. There's obviously been a lot written about this. And this was his reply. We'll put it on the screen for our viewers to see. As the union leader in New Hampshire reported it, Giuliani was taken aback during a morning town hall meeting in New Hampshire by a question about his family. I'm going to phrase it a lot more gentle than my nephew did, but he wanted to know how you could expect the loyal following of Americans when you are not getting it from your own family, a mother asked. Giuliani responded, "I love my family very, very much and will do anything for them. There are complexities in every family in America," Giuliani said quietly. "The best thing I can say is kind of leave my family alone, just like I'll leave your family alone." Ron Brownstein?
Well, I think it was a very genuine answer. Obviously, there are other Republicans who think the family history is a vulnerability for Giuliani. But, you know, I think we learned during the Clinton impeachment that Americans sort of intuitively understand that in everybody's life, there are things they don't want to read about on the front page of the Washington Post or the New York Times or the LA Times. And I think we saw that very kind of mature understanding. And in the end, I think Giuliani will receive the same kind of verdict from the public. They will judge him on other grounds.
However, within the Republican primary, I think
there will be voters.
Mitt Romney
sure.
has fewer of those things that would be embarrassing to read on the front page of the paper, and that's going to help him. And you see it when he talks about family at every opportunity.
You bring up Mitt Romney, and you wrote an article, Matt Cooper, in your magazine, Condé Nast Portfolio, about Romney, and it was very interesting, a portion of it, which I'll put up on the screen, about how President Romney would approach the work at hand. Romney is always analytical, you wrote, the hallmark of the Bain Capital approach to both consulting and private equity. To this day, Romney likes his information voluminous, says his campaign manager and gubernatorial chief of staff, Beth Myers. Romney might be a congenial panderer, but he isn't someone who would look into Vladimir Putin's soul and pronounce him a friend. The contrast to President Bush. What do you mean?
That's right. Well, you know, both he and George Bush, it's irresistible to compare them. They're both sons of Republican politicians who wanted to be president. They both got Harvard MBAs. But Bush is famously, you know, decides more from his gut. And Romney is very analytical, and to some degree, I think that's an enviable quality, a good quality in a president. But as I said in the piece, you know, he is also a panderer, and he's clearly, you know, stretched his positions, to put it charitably. And, you know, that may be a detriment to him.
It's interesting, with all of his analytical skill, he is the Republican candidate most going to the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. There is nothing very complex or nouvelle about the way he's running for president. He's making two assumptions. The way you win the Republican primary is to consolidate conservatives to the greatest extent that you can, and to focus on those early states in Iowa and New Hampshire. While Giuliani has talked about putting more focus later in the month, now you have this calendar shift where South Carolina is moving up to the middle of January, moving back Iowa and New Hampshire, and you have the possibility that this race could be largely decided, as it has been since 1980, by the continuum of those three states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. And he seems to be the most focused, at least initially, on those very first two states in a very kind of conventional way.
John Harwood, Mitt Romney also answering questions about where some of his trust money goes. In a blind trust, he's got a huge fortune, $250 million, according to estimates. Some of those investments in conflict with his campaign positions, say on abortion, or money in companies that may be investing in Sudan. Is this an issue for him?
You know, flip side of the issue affecting John Edwards, who's got money invested with a hedge fund that had been involved in subprime mortgages, and he's talking about
they were foreclosing on Katrina victims in New Orleans.
Exactly. You know, I think this is a minor issue for Mitt Romney. He does have his money in a blind trust. They're now going about trying to dissociate that trust. The trustee has said from investments that are at odds with Romney's positions. But I think people realize that we have a large and complex economy, and it's not easy to sort.
But he's been aggressive about this. Back when he was running against Senator Kennedy, he said the blind trust is an age-old ruse. He was quoted as saying, "You give a blind trust rules. You can say to a blind trust, don't invest in properties which might be in conflict of interest or where the seller might think they're going to get an advantage from me." That was him going on the offensive about a blind trust against Senator Kennedy.
Well, on blind trust, like on so many other things, that was then and this is now. The question for Romney, I think, he is a famous analyst of problems and issues. He did that in business. The challenge for him is he's running in a belief party. How much does a belief party want to take somebody who appears to have calculated where he has to be on certain issues and decided to get there? He's running against Giuliani. What Giuliani has going for him is the sense that there is some unbendable core inside him, a spine of steel, if you will. That may be the where we end up.
Well, there's an appetite, though, I think, on the part of Republican rank-and-file voters for that competence that critics believe has been lacking. And I think Mitt Romney's certainly going to be competitive in that respect. The implied criticisms, of course, are to these problems in the past couple of years. People used to say of Republicans they might not like government very much, but they can run the place. Well, they're no longer saying that. And I think Mitt Romney's going to be extremely competitive there based on the kinds of things Matt pointed out in his article. He has a real track record with respect to management, and you're exactly right, Ron. That is the kind of campaign he's running.